Hello, my little rain clouds. I've been wanting to talk about something for quite a while, and it's a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I care about it a lot, and I want to do it justice. But realistically, I don't think I'm ever going to feel ready to talk about it, and I don't want to let that stop me. So I'm just going to talk about it. And I'll probably make a bunch of different audios about it, and that's okay. But it's a topic that I have a lot of feelings about, and that topic is feelings. Feelings are incredible. They are really, really great. More specifically, I'm talking about emotions, not so much the physical feelings that can occur in your body, although those are pretty incredible too. But I'm talking about the emotions, the cognitive experiences that we have. They're really, really useful. They're really pleasant, but they are really useful. And I never really thought about what emotions are for. I don't think anyone ever really told me. I think it's just kind of implied, or maybe a lot of people don't really know. I'm not sure. But yeah, my parents, my teachers, nobody ever really told me what the point of feelings were, why we have them. But they're actually really incredible. I'm not really a fan of feeling most of them, admittedly, but as a concept and as a way to help other people with their feelings, they're really great. But yes, they're still unpleasant for me as well. A lot of them, not all of them. So what are feelings? Feelings are messengers. They let us know what's going on in our life, how we think about it, how we feel about it, how we relate to it, how events and situations and people interact with us, our conception of the world, our conception of ourselves. They tell us lots about all sorts of things. How we relate to other people, how we fit in with other people, if we like something, if we don't like something, whether something's meeting up to our standards, all sorts of things like that. That information can be really, really helpful. And a lot of the time, we're not really consciously acting on it. We're not necessarily that consciously aware that we're experiencing those feelings or what they mean and how they relate to us and what we're going through. People say to trust your feelings, to listen to your heart or follow your heart, but we don't really tend to focus that much on why that's the case. But it turns out feelings are really great. They are very good indicators of what's going on and what we want in life, and they help us to make judgments and decisions and choices, at least if we listen to our feelings. A lot of the times, we don't. Because a lot of the feelings are unpleasant. They don't feel nice. And so we often ignore them, push them to the side, squash them down, bottle them up, or maybe distract ourselves, maybe even self-medicate with drugs or alcohol or comfort food or sex or entertainment or anything like that. But when you listen to your feelings, unpleasant as they might be, they help you to make better choices about what you want in life, about who you are or who you want to be. And they're really, really helpful. Emotions are a bit like pain. Pain is a really useful thing to have. It sucks to experience it, but it's actually really, really great that we have the capacity to feel pain. Pain is a messenger as well, and it alerts you to physical damage that your body is sustaining. So if you put your hand on a hot stove, for example, it will sense that your cells are taking damage, that your body is getting burned, and then it will send a message all the way up to your brain, and it will tell you, hey, pay attention to this. Your body's getting hurt. Stop doing whatever it is that you're doing, or run away, or, avoid it in some way. And that's really useful. It's useful to become aware of the problem, and it also motivates you to change something. It makes you pull your hand back, take it off that hot stove. And that's a really good thing. And that's why pain is so unpleasant, because, well, 2 reasons. Number 1, it's meant to be something that you can't really ignore. And that's a good thing. If you're able to swipe left on that feeling, that message, then you're ignoring something and your body's continuing to take damage. This is urgent and important, so you need to be aware of it. It's also unpleasant so that it motivates you to stop doing it. It makes you go, oh, I don't like the effects of my actions, so I will change what I'm doing. And so it's good that pain is unpleasant. It's meant to be unpleasant. If it weren't unpleasant, then you might ignore it or keep doing it. But instead, it's a big, loud, unpleasant message that you can't ignore and that you want to act on. We may sometimes wish that we didn't have the capacity to feel pain, but it's actually a really, really important thing that we can feel pain. There are some people who can't feel pain, and they tend to have really crappy lives because their body gets really damaged. They often bang their hands into things, they get cuts and scrapes without realizing it, their body sustains all kinds of damage. And if you were in that situation, you'd probably be like, why don't I have some kind of system that alerts me to this and makes me not do things that cause me to have damage? My hands are all banged up and I can't do anything with them. This sucks. So you'd probably wish for a system like pain. You'd want it to not be something you could ignore. You want it to grab your attention, to make you stop doing whatever it is that's causing damage to your body. So pain's actually really great. Just not so much to experience, but that's kind of the point of it. Emotions are quite similar. They're little messengers. They're carrying signals around letting you know that something's happening. What the message actually is depends on the specific emotion you're experiencing, but they tell you lots of really important, helpful things. Anger, for example, it's a big one. It's an emotion that a lot of people struggle with. They don't really like feeling angry, and often they've had bad experiences seeing how other people express anger, and they don't want to be like that, so they might shut down anger. They say, no, I'm not the kind of person that gets angry. I'm not an angry person. But that's not true. Everybody has the capacity for anger, because it's a good thing in moderation. Anger lets you know when you're not being treated right, when something's wrong, when someone's taking advantage of you, when they're hurting you. Anger tends to want to make itself known. It wants you to say something about it or do something about it. It's an adaptive emotion. It makes you want to change something. And that's really helpful a lot of the time. If somebody keeps taking your lunch, for example, you'd be like, hey, what the heck? That's not cool. That's my lunch. That's wrong. According to the moral code I live by, the laws and etiquette in the society that I live in, you're not meant to do that. I'm suffering as a result of your actions. And so you want to go and tell that person, hey, stop stealing my lunch. That's not cool. And if they don't change, if they keep stealing your lunch, you're going to get more angry about it. And it's going to make you do more to try and change that. And that's a good thing, as long as you act appropriately. See, the feelings themselves aren't wrong, but our behaviors in response to the feelings can be. So if someone steals your lunch and then you take a hammer and smash their car, that's not really an appropriate response. Likewise, if you beat them up or kill them or something, that's an overreaction. That's not an appropriate way to express that anger. But confronting them about it, maybe yelling a little to show that you're serious about it, but making sure that they understand that what they're doing is wrong and how it affects you, that's an important thing. And if they still keep doing it, then maybe you want to take it to someone else, have someone else intervene, or you want to take appropriate steps to stop it happening in the future. Again, that's a good thing. As long as you act in moderation, appropriate to the situation, that's perfectly healthy. There are lots of other emotions that tell you all sorts of other things. Guilt and shame, for example, very useful emotions. Also very unpleasant emotions, but they're meant to be unpleasant so that you take notice and then try and change whatever is causing those feelings. Guilt tends to be when your actions, your behavior, isn't in line with your own standards. When you feel as though you're not behaving right or appropriately. Shame is more when your actions or your behavior are not in line with someone else's standards, or at least what you think they are. And so you feel bad about that. And that makes you go, oh, I better take notice of what I'm doing that's making me feel ashamed and change that. For example, swearing. You might be perfectly comfortable swearing in the presence of your friends because they might be cool with that. Their standards say that swearing is okay. But your parents, for example, or the Queen of England might have different standards. And so swearing may not be acceptable to them. And so if you do swear in their presence, then they may say something about it, and they may express disapproval. But really, whether they do or not, you may still feel shame, because you feel as though you're not living up to their expectations. You're not acting the way that it's socially acceptable to do. On the other hand, guilt, for example, you might think that, say, stealing is wrong. But you might be around people who think stealing is fine. Maybe it's cool to steal. But nevertheless, your standards tell you that stealing is wrong. And so if you steal something, those other people may not mind, and you may not feel shame, but you may feel guilt. Your standards are not being met. And you may still feel shame because if anyone else found out, it might not be in line with their standards. And so they would judge you negatively. And we don't tend to like that. It impacts our sense of self and our self-worth. And so we tend to feel bad about ourselves, which is not pleasant, but it does let us know, hey, pay attention to this thing and change it. Usually, if we've done something that we didn't like, we may feel regret or remorse, and that makes us want to change the past. Unfortunately, we can't, but we can do something in the future to try and make it better, make up for it. We can apologize. We can do some gesture to show that we're sorry, to try and make it right. And so those feelings, guilt and shame, regret and remorse, can motivate us to take certain actions. You've probably had that experience where you settle down to sleep, maybe, or just randomly during the day, a thought pops into your head that goes, hey, remember that really awkward thing you did like 7 years ago? We have a clip of that. Let's watch the clip. And then you relive that moment and you probably feel shame and embarrassment, maybe self-loathing. Those feelings are deeply unpleasant. They really suck. But that is your brain's way of trying to tell you, hey, what we did then was not socially acceptable. according to the standards we now know, that was wrong. We shouldn't have done that. So, let's not do it again. And every so often, your brain will remind you of that, just to make sure that you keep getting the message and that you continue to live up to those new standards. It really sucks, but it is helpful. It's also something that typically we need a little bit of a nudge, because we'll often say, I'm so dumb. Why did I do that? I shouldn't have done that. I should have known better. Which doesn't really help at all. But if you take that and you twist it around a little bit and you say, I now know better and I won't do it again. I've learned from that. Now I'm wiser. I'm more experienced. And I know not to do that. I'll do something different in the future. Then we can maybe feel a little bit better about things. But we still have some bad feelings because that motivates us to not do that thing again. And unpleasant as it is, that's helpful. There are lots of other emotions too, and they tell us a bunch of different things. But often what they're telling us is, hey, something's important. Something's important to us. And that's a really good thing to be aware of. Jealousy, for example. A lot of people mix up envy and jealousy. Envy is where you want something that someone else has. Jealousy is where you're afraid of someone taking something that you have, or that you'll lose something that you have. So, for example, we might feel jealous about a partner. If someone's flirting with our romantic partner, or even if our partner is just spending a lot of time with someone, could be completely innocent. But if we feel insecure about our relationship, then that jealousy is telling us, hey, this relationship maybe isn't so rock solid. It's under threat. Our relationship might be crumbling. We need to do something about it. And so sometimes people will get all passive aggressive or clingy, or they'll act out in immature ways. But ideally, what would happen if you listen to those feelings and acknowledge them for what they are, you'll recognize, oh, yeah, maybe this relationship isn't as strong as I want it to be, and I'm afraid of losing it because it's important to me. And then that will motivate you to take action to repair that relationship, to maintain it, to spend more time with that person, to do things together, or to voice your concerns to them. Say, hey, I'm feeling like we're maybe not as close as we used to be, or hey, I'm concerned that this other person's making a move on you, or that you might be getting kind of attached to them. And then if that's the case, we can try and do something about that. But if it's not the case, then we find out. And that can change things. Because the thing about emotions is that they're truthful, but they're not necessarily accurate. And what I mean by that is that our emotions are based on what we think and what we believe. And those things can be factually inaccurate. We might think or believe that, say, our partner is interested in someone else, and so we might feel jealous. But in actuality, our partner might not be interested in that person at all. It could be something completely different. But nevertheless, because it's something we believe, we then have the jealousy feeling. Or, for example, we might be anxious that we've upset someone, that they're mad at us. And they might be, but they also might not be. If we don't have the facts to base those beliefs and those thoughts on, then we might make a mistaken assumption that, say, someone's upset with us. And whether that's true or not, we feel the feeling. We feel the anxiety. It's real. It's not necessarily accurate, but it's real. The message itself is truthful. It's not a lie, but the sender of that message might have gotten the facts wrong. There may be some mistaken assumptions, some faulty premises, some poor logic. And so we still feel things, and the feelings are valid, but they aren't necessarily based on reality. You see that a lot with people who have, say, self-worth issues. They might believe that they are worthless, that they're a failure, that everything they're going to try is going to end badly, that people won't like them, etc. And so they have a lot of these feelings that are trying to inform them of that are trying to motivate them to take certain actions, to protect themselves. And those feelings are real, but they're not necessarily based on accurate information. They're not necessarily based on how people actually see them, but more how that person thinks that others will see them. And that's an important thing to become aware of, because it's really, really helpful to listen to your emotions, but it's also important to take them with a grain of salt and to remember that, yes, you are feeling those things, and you can trace back those feelings to figure out what's going on, but it's not necessarily based on accurate information. And so, when you realize that, hopefully you can do some investigating and exploring and try and figure out what the accurate information actually is. Is that person really upset with me, or do I just think they might be upset with me? Does my partner actually have the hots for someone else, or do I just think that might be the case? And it could be that that's more about you than it is about the other person. It could be that you're insecure about something, or that you've had a pattern of experiences before and you think that it's going to go the same way that it went then. That's a common thing. So often our experiences will inform the beliefs that we have, and those beliefs will inform the kind of thoughts that we have, the way that we perceive events in the present. And then that will inform the feelings that we have. And then those feelings may inform our actions, which can start the whole cycle all over again. So we can get caught in these vicious cycles if we don't check what we're feeling, and our thoughts, and our beliefs, and our assumptions, and we figure out what's really going on. But assuming that your beliefs are accurate, that you are accurately perceiving a situation, then your feelings can tell you a great deal about all sorts of stuff. And they can motivate you to make choices and to take actions that will make your life better. Sadness is a big emotion that we don't like, but sadness tends to tell us when something matters to us. When we're sad about something, it probably tells us, hey, this is really important to us. We care about this a lot. And there may not be something that we can do about it necessarily, but there might be. And if there is, then that sadness may motivate us to take action. Happiness is kind of the opposite, but it still tells us that something is important. It just means, hey, keep going with this. This is great. Keep investing your energy here. Keep doing this thing. Do more of this. They're kind of two sides of the same coin. They both tell you that something's important to you. Depression is an interesting thing. Depression is a complex thing, complex idea made up of lots of different aspects. But if you are experiencing the feelings of depression, it may be indicating to you that you don't have a lot in your life that feels valuable to you. Your life may feel empty. You may not feel a sense of worth or fulfillment. And so that feeling might be trying to tell you that and saying, hey, let's try and change this. But unfortunately with depression, if you don't act on those feelings, if you let them sit for a while, you try and ignore them, self-medicate, distract yourself, then you can get trapped in this cycle of different systems that affect your thoughts and your beliefs and your feelings and your behaviors. And so you get trapped, and depression makes it very difficult to change the things that it actually needs you to change, which can be really debilitating and can lead to people getting stuck there. I've certainly experienced that myself. And it can be tough to break all of those cycles, to change thoughts and beliefs and behaviors, but it is possible. And I found that sometimes, at least when I listen to my depression and I figure out, oh yeah, I'm maybe not doing all of the things that I really want to be doing. I'm not living in line with my values. I'm not doing the kinds of things that fulfill me. Then sometimes I can feel motivated to do those things, and I can recognize, I probably need to do those things. And then depression might pipe down. But it can be hard to do. Feelings, though, they're not our enemies. They're our friends. They're trying to help us. That's what they're there for. There are a lot of resources the body uses to give us the capacity to feel emotions, the evolution of our brains so that we can feel them. It's there for a reason, because it helps us, because it lets us adapt to situations and make better judgments. Our brains use quite a lot of energy to generate those emotions, and it does so for a reason, because they're valuable. So they're really helpful to have. So emotions are our friends, even if they're not pleasant. Frustration. Frustration is letting us know that we want something and that there's an obstacle in the way, something stopping us from getting what we want, which is not pleasant, but it's meant to be unpleasant so that we then take notice and take action. We do something different. We try a different approach, or we try even harder. We push past the obstacle. If we can't go around it, if we can't talk to someone and get them to help us, that's a useful feeling because it makes us change and adapt to our situation. Anxiety. Anxiety is typically a kind of dread or fear around a future event or a possible event, something we're worried may or will happen. Now, obviously, it's not always accurate as to whether something will happen or how bad it will be or whether we'll be able to handle it. But it's telling you, hey, there's something important that we're worried about. We may need to take some steps to prepare for this. We may need to plan something. We may need to get help, or we may need to avoid this thing. Unfortunately, we don't always act in the most appropriate or healthy way in response to that message. But nevertheless, the feeling itself can be useful. And sometimes we may have anxiety about something that we don't really need to be anxious about. And it can become disordered, which a lot of people struggle with. And unfortunately, the effects of that, of being anxious about something and then having a panic attack or avoiding it, sitting in your room afraid of something that may or may not happen, may then influence the way we see ourselves, our beliefs about ourselves, that we're not competent or capable, that we're an anxious wreck, for example, which in turn makes us believe that we're less capable of handling things, which makes us more anxious. You see that with depression too. Depression makes us feel bad about ourselves, that we're a waste of space, that we're not doing anything of value, that we're incapable of things. And so we feel worse about ourselves. And so we may feel unmotivated to take good, healthy courses of action because of those feelings, because of the feelings that come from the thoughts that come from the beliefs that we have. And so these cycles can kind of go around and around and around and build up and get worse. So it's important that we stop them, that we challenge those beliefs, those thoughts, change the way that we behave. And it's difficult to do that alone. Often we need the help of a therapist to talk us through things, to listen to us and help us recognize what's going on. What is it that I'm feeling? Why am I feeling this way? What am I thinking? What beliefs do I have about these things? And then once we're more aware of it, we can try and change it. And it is possible to change your beliefs, your thoughts, your behaviors. You can't really change your feelings, not directly, but you can change the things that make those feelings, the ways you perceive things, the beliefs you have, the thoughts you have. You can change those, which will then lead to different feelings. And feelings often lead to behaviors, which can then change the way that we think, or the things that we believe, or the way that we feel. It's all a big interconnected cycle. But it is possible to change it, particularly with the help of a therapist. But whether we go through therapy or not, listening to our feelings is a vital thing in our lives. It is a really important skill. Listening to your feelings can help you live a much better life. A life where you are happier, more fulfilled, more in tune with things, more present, more aware, where you know yourself more. You're acting more genuinely. You're making the right decisions. You're making healthy choices. You're connecting with others. You're wiser, more experienced. You learn from your mistakes. You grow as a person. You understand what it is that you feel and why you feel that way, and what those feelings can tell you. And that is invaluable. Feelings are amazing, and they suck a lot of the time. I know, but they are really, really helpful when you listen to them. And typically, the more you try and ignore them, the stronger they get. The louder they get, the more unpleasant they get, because they don't like being ignored. They're not meant to be ignored. You need to listen to that message. And if you don't, it's going to repeat it even louder and even louder until you do take notice and until you do change something, if you need to change something. So it may seem like you're sparing yourself that discomfort or pain or suffering, the unpleasant experience of having an emotion, but actually you tend to make it worse. Whereas if you just listen to your feelings, you acknowledge them, accept them, and then possibly act on them, you tend to find it gets a lot better. Your feelings subside, they fade, not instantly, but they decrease their intensity, and so unpleasant feelings tend to go away once you take action, or at the very least, listen to them. And that's really, really helpful. And it makes things so much better. Because not only do you not have that unpleasant feeling anymore, but you've made a better choice. You've listened to yourself and acted in the way that you want to. And I urge you all, listen to yourself, listen to your feelings. Take them with a grain of salt. They might not be accurate, but they are truthful. Regardless of what you may think, what you may have wrong, your feelings aren't lying to you. They're trying to help. Listen to them. They'll thank you for it. And I thank you for listening to me, because I am very passionate about feelings. I'm sure that I'll ramble on about this again. I'm sure I'll make lots of different audios about all different kinds of feelings, what they're trying to tell you, how to deal with them. But for now, I think that's enough. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.